All right, guys, I just want to welcome back to the Everything College World podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be discussing a ranked matchup in the Pac-12 between Utah and USC. Utes 2-0 a season ago against the Trojans, coming to Los Angeles, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. It's going to be the site for this one. -7 in favor of the Trojans. 56 is the total. Looking at this Utah offense, Nick, we went from Cam Rising being questionable to play week 1, end of August, to him not even playing at all, and we're in mid-October, and doesn't appear he will. And, the first few weeks, it made a little bit of sense. It was a bit of a survive and advance against Baylor, Florida. And now that we've gotten into conference play, this approach at quarterback has went from being conservative to just being flat out laughable with what they've done at this position. It doesn't seem like they've tried very hard to prep these guys for the absence of Rising potentially for the entire season. Nate Johnson, the freshman, not very good as a thrower. Really good as a runner, though. He can certainly make some magic happen. $153 and 3 touchdowns when he's doing that on the ground, even though against UCLA had only 2 yards rushing, certainly was not able to, exploit those gaps, only 3 against Oregon State. So what he was able to do early on in the season did not start to work at all after the first 3 weeks. Bryson Barnes' first throw of the year was a 70-yard touchdown against Florida. Since then's not been great. Only had 159 in that game. Got to go against Cal. 21 attempts on 15 completions, completed 71% for 128. The quarterback play here for Utah has not been great, Nick, and I certainly blame, Andy Ludwig and Kyle Whittingham here. This is just not a great approach, especially if they knew that Rising was going to be out long term. Like I said, started nice and conservative. Now it's just a concern and a flat-out joke.
You got to believe that they knew from the healthcare professionals up there in Salt Lake City that Rising wasn't going to play. This should not have come as a shock to them that Rising wasn't going to play. If they were, we're mid-October, like you said, and Rising has not even seemed like he is ready to go at all. Nate Johnson and Bryson Barnes have not been ready, not been stepped up to the position, and it's tough for both of them to get thrown in there, but neither of them were really ready. Nate Johnson, 54% completion percentage, 500 yards passing, 3 touchdowns for him, obviously has the ability to run the ball, 153 on the ground, and 3 scores for Johnson so far this season. Barnes looked good at times in the Florida game, but outside of that, just has looked poor. Below 400 yards passing, 57% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions for him. It's a very anemic passing attack that is obviously struggling from losing their captain and leader, Cam Rising, and it certainly has led to some issues for them. They're averaging 149 yards per game through the air, and they're barely sneaking by, winning off of the back of a great defense. When you play against a team like USC that is a really dynamite offense that can put up a ton of points on you very quickly, Utah finds themselves in a tough position because USC could get out there and put up a ton of points if the defense has a bad day, and Utah will be totally out of the contest.
Yeah, Bryson Barnes, he was forced into action each of the last 2 years in the Rose Bowl with Rising going down. They didn't attack the transfer portal at all. They didn't seem needed to add any insurance, and they certainly could have went out there and got an admirable veteran. They just opted not to do it. Now this is where they're at, 150 yards per game as a passing attack. And looking at some of the weapons, of course, Mikey Matthews really stepping up at receiver, 21 grabs, 202 yards. Money Parks and Devon Bailey, 12 receptions each. Both have, a little north of 160 yards receiving. And these guys have certainly suffered from the lack of a passing attack or, a nice presence at quarterback. Brant Cooley, of course, he was also questionable for that Florida game. Hasn't seen the field. So I don't know what kind of game that Utes are playing here with the injury report, Nick. But, at the end of the day, they must have been more focused on that than actually prepping this offense to succeed without them.
This has certainly been a problem. Like I said, I don't really understand how it's coming as a shock to them. They have great health care up there in Salt Lake. It's a big university. They should have great medical staff. They seem to be struggling to figure out who's healthy, who isn't. And they've been really maybe they're trying to use smoke and mirrors to confuse their opponents, but no one's really fallen for it, and they find themselves in a tough position because this offense is not really producing, and now they're playing against USC that has a very bad defense at times. So if you want to pick apart a defense, this is the defense to do it, and Utah's offense just looks, like I said, anemic and really has no opportunity to really go out there and win games.
And their injury bug is, completely flattered down. Jaquindon Jackson's really been beat up most of this year. Only 333 yards and a touchdown for him. Expecting a big breakout season. Micah Bernard, of course, played 1 game. He's out for the rest of the year. Chris Curry's had to get involved. Only 8 carries, but they're also trying to get him on the field a little bit more. Jalen Glover as well. He's been, really their lead back. 70 carries, 249 yards, 2 touchdowns, a little under 4 yards per attempt. And then one of their defenders, Sione Vakai, he got to go against Cal at running back. 164 and 2 touchdowns on the year. $158 of that came against California on 15 attempts, including one that I think was a 70-plus yarder. That's kind of where they're at right now. That's impressive. You got versatile players on this roster. Vakai, a safety, comes over to the side of the ball and puts on a clinic against the Golden Bears in what should have been a more lower-scoring affair. So that's encouraging, Nick. The same thing happened with Jaquindon Jackson last year. Converted quarterback, comes to running back and dominates at the end of the year. injury bug continues to really flame them out, though, and this running game is going to have to be dynamite here against the defense that certainly has had their struggles.
This is certainly going to have to be an opportunity for the running game to make some moves. Like you said, Fakai comes over and had a pretty good game, 164, 10.3 yards per carry, and 2 scores for him. Obviously, that's raised by some of those longer touchdowns. They lost Micah Bernard. Quinton Jackson's been injured. Jalen Glover's been really solid for them. It's been a mess all over the field, 172 per game on the ground. If they're going to win this game, they're going to have to attack this weak USC defense and be a by committee approach on the ground for this really, bit part offense here that's just struggling through the injuries.
Yeah, the offensive line, they've been, pretty above average unit. Michael McCoskey at right guard, he's been pretty good for them. Keaton Billis, a veteran, certainly hasn't been the greatest in pass protection this year. He's still a bulldozer, though, at left guard. Satona Lamua, these guys are physical. And this is one thing we talked about in the preseason. They don't really send guys to the NFL very often. I think only a couple in the last number of years, but they're incredibly physical. This is an opportunity for them to really take over this game, and some of these guys have been struggling, like Spencer Fano and some of the other guys I labeled off. Big opportunity for them to come out there and earn their stripes this week with the Pac-12 championship game certainly within reach.
I think it certainly is within reach for this team, but this offense just is struggling. Obviously, the injuries is a problem, but they're at 5-1 here. This defense is keeping them in games. When you look at the amount of points they've given up in games, 13 against Baylor, 7 against Weber State, 7 against UCLA, 14 against Cal, and even in the loss to Oregon State, they only gave up 21. This defense is fantastic. It's going to keep them in games. They could certainly have a shot at the Pac-12 title game still with the way that this team is set up.
And looking at the USC offense, they seemed completely different after that bye week, after just starting the year on a complete tear. They still put up 40-plus points in 3 straight before going into Notre Dame. But I said this one had 2017 vibes written all over it. We're in the first play in South Bend. Sam Darnold fumbles it. They also have a muff punt sometime in that game. First drive, Caleb Williams gets some pressure, throws a high ball, picked, sets up an easy touchdown. They also had a muff punt, which they did recover. I mean, just very identical stuff, Nick, where they ended up giving 28 points to Notre Dame off of turnovers. Williams' worst game of his career by far. The pressure was really getting to him. That first interception was off pressure. The second one, batted ball. Third interception, some pressure he's trying to evade. He just throws a bad ball trying to make a play. Inexcusable. Caleb Williams did not have a good game one bit. I think he's getting a little bit too much hate, especially on the Heisman odds. Had a Notre Dame fan come up to him after the game talking a lot of stuff. This guy still leads FBS in touchdowns with 23 through the air. Those 4 picks, 3 of them coming in that contest. It's not great, Nick, but I think I fired up Caleb Williams. This game's been circled on his radar for a long time against the Utes trying to get revenge. I think this is exactly what Caleb Williams and this offense need, to get smacked right in the mouth. And this is an opportunity for them to fold or be, the unit we expect them to be, which is one of the top 3 in college football.
Social media has not been kind to Caleb Williams this week, and certainly his mistakes against Notre Dame are certainly on him, but the hate he's received this week I think is totally unjustified considering the season he's having. He's still 70% completing 70% of his passes, 2,021 yards this season, 23 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, obviously 3 in that single game, plus the fumble he gave up against Notre Dame. The hate is just unjustified. For him to drop to what you said, plus 3,500 odds in the Heisman race, the defending Heisman winner, is just a ridiculous drop, in my opinion. That makes no sense to me. I think that's just a crucial overreaction, total overreaction very quickly. The market should correct on that, in my opinion. I've seen podcasts, I'm not going to throw out names, but there's certain podcasts like one that Barstool has where they were totally ragging Williams all week in their episode. I don't think it's necessary. I think Caleb Williams is still the best quarterback in college football right now, and he has a big opportunity against a very good Utah defense to try and show his work. While this defense has been great for Utah, they've been a little weak in the past at certain situations. So can he pick apart that secondary and get an opportunity to show that he still is the star that we know he is?
USC quarterbacks always seem to struggle in South Bend. It doesn't matter who it is. That just seems to be a theme with the Trojans. Williams, though, have a great opportunity to bounce back against the team that he wants revenge on badly. But for that to happen, the offensive line's got to be better. Jonah Menheim at left tackle has certainly been good. Justin Dedich, a veteran center, though, has had some miscues, had some penalties, has not been great. Jared Kingston, Emmanuel Pregnon overall have had solid years, but they were not very good against Notre Dame. Michael Tarquin, he's really just been getting kicked over their right tackle more consistently than others. And, they brought a lot of pressure from time to time, did USC, and they did not adjust one bit. The offensive line, they just had a terrible game. Worst of the year for the entire football team. Really, the offensive side of the ball. I thought the defense was pretty admirable. The offensive line's got to be better, Nick. Utah, they're phenomenal up front. They don't allow much on the ground. USC knows that firsthand, and they've not been very good running the ball themselves. I knew there was going to be a colossal failure against Notre Dame. 2.8 yards per carry, 3 straight games held to 100, less than 150 yards rushing. Only 95 against Colorado, 146 against Arizona. And, those are 2 of the weaker fronts in college football. Now they're playing back-to-back elite fronts tier in college football. They got to be better running the football. Lincoln Riley knows that. They need to start being more creative. Zach Branch was in the backfield, had about a 20-yard carry. So they're starting to lean towards that way, but the game script really didn't call for it when they were down by significant points after all those turnovers. So I think the run game was certainly trending in a better direction, but here it's got to be a lot better.
It has to be a lot better. The running game has not been fantastic. 158 on the ground this season is not great numbers. For his part, Lloyd has been fantastic for them, right? He's been good. Marshawn Lloyd, when he has gotten carries, 7.5 yards per carry, 5 scores, 565 yards on the ground. But outside of him, he's really not really found any sort of momentum on the ground. Caleb Williams has 6 rushing touchdowns, but they're trying to limit him due to the bad ankle. 116 on the ground from Austin Jones, Quentin Joyner. These guys got to step up. They got to find good balance in the running attack. I think, like I said, Lloyd's having a good season, but it's not good enough for this USC offense. If Williams is going to make mistakes and put them into a position where they have to run the ball, they have to find a way to get that good balance. This is a very good run defense for Utah, one of the best in the nation, so certainly is not a great matchup for the Trojans here.
They have plenty of weapons at wide receiver, still one of the nation's deepest groups. Taj Washington, Brandon Rice, both over 19 yards per catch, combined 12 touchdowns as well. Mario Williams certainly has had trouble with drops. He's a good slot weapon, though. Zachariah Branch, he finally got back on the field. Had an electric Tecmo Bowl-type punt return, though, at some point in that game. Again, he got involved in the backfield for a run, and then he's been just an electrifying receiver as well. Plenty of speed there, one of the best in college football. Dorian Singer has 3 touchdowns. Michael Jackson, Blake McCree's been a really admirable tight end. USC is incredibly deep at this position. Again, though, they have to get off to some fast starts. The last couple weeks have not been great. They're down 17-0 to Arizona. And then against Notre Dame, first drive, he handed them 7 points with your quarterback turning the ball over with, a high throw after bad pressure. It's just been a disaster overall for this football team, Nick. They really need to get back on track. It really seems like this was coming, though, with how they performed the last 2 weeks. And I think they can certainly change the entire script of their season. Remember last year against Utah, they put up 42 points. They were all over the place through the air. And then after that, that's when they played their best football after a loss. And obviously, it's a completely different script here with how they've struggled the last 2 weeks. But Lincoln Riley and this offense, they have the people in the building, I would say, to get the job done. But faster starts got to be a part of the game plan here.
Certainly has been a red flags flying if you're a USC fan with the way this offense performed the last few weeks. I know they put up a lot of points against Arizona State, Colorado, and Arizona, but they didn't look good in those games necessarily. 332 through the air. This is a very deep wide receiving room that has so many talented pieces. Obviously, you named a few of them. Mario Williams, Taj Washington, Brendan Rice. These guys are all fantastic. This is a good secondary that has some weak points, though, for Utah. Can this USC offense and Caleb Williams pick apart this team? Can Lincoln Riley draw up a game plan that puts them in a good position against this Utah defense? They need to start showing some spark. They really struggled against Notre Dame. They really had no pulse through the air and really just struggled through that game thanks to the turnovers and found themselves deep behind the chains. This is a big opportunity for USC to get a big bounce back here at home against Utah.
Look at that Utes defense. If they can force turnovers, they're going to win this game with ease. This is a phenomenal defense that's been carrying this football team, like you said, and they've been in tough situations, being on the field a lot more. Offense really kind of trying to grind things out, trying to kill a little bit of clock, but field position. It's really just not been a perfect storm for this defense, but Jonah Ellis has been phenomenal, really stepping up amid some injuries. 13 tackles for loss for him, 9 sacks. He's just been terrific. One of the Pac-12 Player of the Year front runners right now. You look at the rest of the defensive line. Keanu Tanavaza at defensive tackle, S6 TFL. Logan Fondo, a freshman, really stepped up. 2 freshmen right there. Junior Tafuna and Van Fellinger got back on the field against Cal. They've been beat up, though. This is a really good defensive line. Guys like Hunter O'Toole haven't played either. They've just been really beat up, Nick, and they have not wavered on this side of the ball. He got back on the field as well, O'Toole. So perfect timing for Utah to finally start to get healthy. They have plenty of options here on this defensive line that, like you said, is phenomenal against the run. 66 yards per game allowed. They've played some pretty tough opponents as well. They held UCLA to only 9 yards. I thought that run game would be able to win them that game. Oregon State held to 131. Really played into their favor there in terms of scheming. This has just been terrific. 13 yards against Florida. It's a really good running attack. Jaden Ott and crew for Cal held to 66. This run defense is no fluke, Nick. It is the nation's best, I would say, up there with Georgia and some of these other teams like Ohio State and whatnot. Utah, though, the defensive line, it's been amazing what they've been able to do for this football team.
66.8 yards per game given up on the ground through this part of the season is an impressive number for the Utah Utes. Fantastic numbers for them. I'm really impressed. Jonah Ellis, like you said, 13 tackles for loss, 9 sacks, 29 total tackles for him, having a great season. O'Toole comes back. He has only played in 1 game this season, but he got 2 tackles in that game, plus a half a sack and a pass breakup. So he certainly is a good player to return in there. Van Fellinger, Junior Tafolu, Fellinger, 9 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. Tafolu, 10 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss. and a sack for him. So certainly the numbers are not terrible on this team. Not terrible, they're fantastic, right? This is a really good unit that is producing and getting the job done in the backfield. They're creating havoc for quarterbacks. They're making a lot of progress up front. They're a big physical unit. We knew they were a big physical unit. We were just wondering what were they going to be able to do when push came to shove and they got there. They're getting a lot of guys that have really significant numbers in terms of tackles for loss. You look at it, guys, 4.5, 6.5, 13, 6, 4 tackles for loss. These numbers are fantastic in terms of pure raw value. And USC cannot run the ball. This is an immediate matchup nightmare for the Trojans. They can't run the ball, and this team does not allow any game on the ground. Utah will be able to control the tempo in that regard.
And of course, the middle of the defense is just as stout. Karen Reed, Lander Barton, these guys have been phenomenal in coverage. Reed's been an elite tackler for them as well. These guys, Reed also missed a game earlier this year due to injury, so it's certainly not been the greatest for them on this side of the ball. Levani Dumani, though, I think he's a Stanford transfer. He's really stepped up, especially as a run defender. This is a phenomenal defense for them. You look at the secondary, I think this is certainly the weakest link for Utah. They haven't really had many opportunities to get exposed against some of these passing attacks. They played a true freshman quarterback at home, and Dante Moore completely ate his lunch. Oregon State, they were able to spark some big plays, though, through the air against DJ Uyunglele. Cal was held in check. I know they were able to force a fumble at some point in that game. They really opened it up for the Utes on a drop-back pass. Florida, they had some passing yards really in garbage time. They've not really been allowing too many big plays, though. Completely different test than what they've seen so far from, schematics at least. And the secondary, I think, has got some talented players, though. Talk about Son of Akai last week, putting up $150 and 2 touchdowns. He's also their leading tackler, Nick, 32 tackles. He's been phenomenal this season, especially as a run defender and a tackler. It's going to be an interesting test for some of these other guys. Zamai Vaughn, Travis Brown, he's a veteran corner for them. They know how good this passing attack is, so it's really going to be up to some of these guys on the boundary to step up. Cole Bishop, of course, a terrific safety. He's a hard hitter, can really make waves off the edge as well. One of those hybrid players. It's phenomenal. But again, it's going to be up to Broughton and Vaughn to really step up, and then we'll see if they can take advantage of any weaknesses potentially in the slot. Teo Johnson, one of the younger players on this secondary. Now, how do you think they'll do in this game, Nick? Because they really haven't been the most sound this season, even though they haven't even played the most quality opponent. So I think there's certainly some cause for concern for the secondary.
I think this is a good unit that has played good in different parts of this game. It's so funny that Vakai is the second leading tackler with 32 total tackles, and he was also playing running back. And impressive numbers. Vakai has 6.5 tackles for loss and a sack. This guy can really do it all. Cole Bishop leading the way with 32 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks for Bishop. A guy that we knew at free safety would be a big leader for this team. And he certainly is doing that. Tao Johnson as well. He's another big leader for this team who's having a great season so far with him, 14 total tackles for him, 3 pass breakups. This is a unit that has a little bit of concern for me, right? They've been up 211 yards per game through the air. So that's certainly something if USC wants to win this game, they're going to have to attack them with the deep ball and try to spread it out to these really super talented wide receivers that the Trojans have. That could be a bit of an issue. It's kind of funny because Utah has the extreme advantage in the run defense, but they have a bit of a disadvantage in the pass defense. Kind of weird balance there when you look at this matchup on paper.
Yeah, last year Williams 381 and 5 touchdowns in the first meeting, 363 and another 3 in the second one, and he was pretty hobbled for most of that second half, so he certainly had their way with them. Fifth nationally, those is Utah pass defense and opponent completion percentage at 52.9%. The team right above them, Notre Dame, so that's certainly something you want to look for. Limiting completions is definitely the easiest way to slow down this passing attack. Look at the USC defense. I figured that matchup against Notre Dame really benefit what's been a poor unit. The defensive line and the outside backers are the best part of this football team. A lot of 12 and 13 personnel. Notre Dame wants to run downhill, and that I think was certainly going to open up the door for some success. And I think it certainly did. They played pretty admirably in that game. They had a busted assignment on a deep passing play by Sam Hartman, but on 49 plays, only allowed 251 yards. Enough of a sample size, Nick. Of course, that's where you want to be, is that few plays. But the interceptions, and again, the free 28 points is why they were on the field so little. 125 allowed on the ground, 126 through the air. I thought this defense was very fine in this game. Only had 1 tackle for loss, but for the most part, they weren't getting grinded down on. Notre Dame did start having some success late, but for the most part, I thought they played very good, and they certainly have the guys to make things happen here against Utah, who's going to want to play on a lower scoring contest. They're going to look to use Nate Johnson, get Barnes on the ground as well. A very impressive physical ground to pound is what they're going to look to go with. And I think they're also going to be in some more tighter bunch formations to try and be physical against USC. And that might play into their hands. Jamil Muhammad, Solomon Byrd, Mike, 18 tackles for loss off the edge. Romeo Height right behind him with 4.5. He's been a pretty solid run defender as well. Bear Alexander, Braylon Shelby. Dejon Benton. They got some guys that have certainly been winners up front. Anthony Lucas, another one of them. This is certainly a team that's really good on the defensive line. Mason Cobb, an inconsistent run defender, but he loves the fire downhill. Taka Curtis, the freshman, was getting on the field early on in that game. They certainly are happy with what his run-stopping potential is. Is this another one of those games where this really plays in the USC's hand, or do you think that this physical dominance on the ground by Utah is just going to completely swarm them?
It certainly is a benefit for this defensive line. They are a pretty solid unit. 152 yards allowed per game on the ground. It's not a bad number necessarily, considering what we thought would happen with this defense in the offseason. They do have some nice pieces. They finally added Solomon Byrd, like you said, 25 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. Jaleel Muhammad, 24 total tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 6 sacks for him. Bear Alexander looking really good to transfer from Georgia, 18 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. I've been very critical of this defense. I think they've been very disappointing this year. They've given up 397 total yards of offense per game, a lot of points as well. When you look at the point totals, they've given up 41 or 48 against Notre Dame, 41 against Arizona, 41 against Colorado, 28 against Arizona State. Not great numbers, certainly, for this team, but this Utah offense is not good. This Utah offense is going to struggle to put up points, so it's going to be a low-scoring affair, in my opinion. I think that will certainly benefit the USC defense. They got to get off the field, and they got to limit the plays on the field and let the offense be able to make something happen for the USC Trojans.
Yeah, Utah, they're 129th nationally in 20-plus yard passing plays. I think some play action could really take advantage of, an undisciplined secondary at times, because, again, they do have that speed in parts of the league. They can certainly win downfield. And that's going to be a big challenge for this USC secondary. Kalen Bullock, obviously one of the nation's best safeties. He's having a phenomenal season. Jacoby Covington, though, Christian Roland Wallace, these guys are each coming off pretty solid games. Covington was a real savior against Arizona. Roland Wallace had a phenomenal game against Notre Dame. I think they're starting to figure out who these two corners are going to be for them, because that's been a struggle area for this football team. Other guys at safety, Bryson Shaw, Max Williams. I know he left that Notre Dame game. They've not really been good at all. And then, you got Zion Branch looking to get on the field more. He's certainly been an admirable tackler for them. And then, I think Jalen Smith, he's the one who got burned for that touchdown. Linebacker Eric Gentry, didn't even mention him. He's got a lot of length. He can certainly defend against, Thomas Yasmin, a tight end who doesn't have much production this season. But I think as USC defense, I think they're going to be confident heading into this game. Play action, though, they can't get burned there because they're certainly susceptible to those big plays when they're not disciplined.
Jalen Smith and Kalen Bullock.
Bad in coverage, good tackler so far this
season.
season.
43 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, but bad in coverage. Bullock been really the only piece that's been solid in coverage and with tackling. 36 total tackles, 5 pass breakups, 1 interception for Bullock. He's your bright spot here. The rest of these guys have really struggled. I've been extremely critical. Bryson Shaw especially has been not having a great season. Max Williams not having a great season as well. I know he potentially facing a little bit of injury. This unit's given up 244 yards per game through the air. Luckily for them, they're playing a Utah offense that is just not really good at passing, so it certainly allows them to have a bit of a get out of jail free here a little bit, which worries me. It doesn't worry me as much about this USC team on defense, because this offense they're playing for Utah is just very poor. They have a good chance here to get some nice plays and get after the quarterback in Johnson, stuff the run. They should be able to win this game.
Looking at the tail of the tape, the team comparisons, clear edge at quarterback for the Trojans. I'm going to call the running back rooms even. Utah really banged up. Last week was a good performance, though, by Jackson and Mackay, who's really not even a running back. I don't even know what his role will be in this game. USC, Marshawn Lloyd, Austin Jones, they're pretty good as well. Just the production's not been really there for them. I'm going to just go ahead and call it even, though, in the running back room. Trojans get the nod at wide receiver. And I think the offensive line, I'm going to go ahead and go with the Utes. I just think they're a more physical unit in this moment in time, even though when pass protection's on point for the Trojans, they're hard to slow down. D-line, 2 really good defensive lines, probably the 2 best in the conference. Utes still got to get the edge. They're playing like a top 5 unit in all of CFB. Linebacker as well goes to them. And I think the secondary also going to go to the Utes. Clear sweep for them on defense. The Trojans, though, again, looking to play with some confidence. Kalen Bullock, an elite player. And then they have some linebackers. They have, a couple of different guys that can roll out there. But I think the Utes, clean sweep for them on defense, just meant an elite unit for them. Certainly one of the best in CFB.
I think it certainly is a clean sweep for the Utah. This defense is fantastic. The offense definitely gets the edge for USC here. This is a classic matchup in college football where you get a really good offense against a really good defense and a really bad offense against a really bad defense. Who is going to come out on top? Is the offense going to be one that carries the team, or is the defense going to be one that gets the team to win?
Looking at the final thoughts on the prediction, keys to the game for Utah. Got to force turnovers in the Trojans. They just committed 5 turnovers. They've committed a turnover at least in the last 4 games. That's something that's really going to help set up your offense for success. And I think you really got to drain clock, to keep that USC offense on the sideline, your best chance for success. USC, got to block. You're going against one of the best D-lines in CFB. Got to play with some more pride on that side of the ball for that O-line. And then I think Caleb Williams just have a bounce-back game. I think he certainly will have that one. As a USC fan, no prediction for me, but, I just very disappointed with the performance last year, again, or last week, that is, against Notre Dame. Very upsetting effort there. You get better or you fold here, Nick, and that's the only thing you can really ask for as a fan. Wouldn't want it any other way. The Trojans, have 4 ranked opponents left on the docket. Plenty to still play for. You can still put yourself right back in contention. Go out there and prove it or don't.
Certainly an opportunity for USC to go out and prove that they're still a team that can compete for a playoff spot and a national championship berth. I am going to take the USC Trojans here. I'm going to go 28-20, a closer defensive battle at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. I think USC gets the bounce back here. I just think Utah's woes in offense are going to cause too many problems, and I think Caleb Williams is not going to have a game like that at any point this year. I think Williams is going to watch the film this week and lock in and realize that he made some mistakes here, but that's totally not something that he can happen again. He's going to be able to focus up and get the job done. I think Williams is going to have a great game this week, and I think this offense is going to have a great game despite the 28 points only. I think they're going to be able to get the points and control the clock and move the ball around when they need to. I like USC to win this game and get themselves right back in the direction. Look, the Pac-12 is a very competitive conference, but there are so many teams that can certainly win the Pac-12 still. USC losing out of conference does not totally knock them out, in my opinion. I think they have a great opportunity here to get another huge conference win at home against Utah.
USC's 4-0 in the conference, top of the standings currently. And if they only do score 4 touchdowns, how do you think the reaction would be to that? Would there be some more clowning going on for USC? Or do you think that'd be a positive step in the right direction considering who they're playing?
I think people will make some comments about it just off the raw numbers, but I think you have to say that it's impressive against a Utah defense. Like when you look at the points they've given up, I listed it before, but 14, 21, 7, 7, 13. This Utah defense does not give up points. I think 28 points against Utah defense would be a very impressive mark.
That's going to be it for today's episode. As always, Nick, appreciate you joining me for some good analysis.
Absolutely looking forward to this Pac-12 matchup.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.